Hello, Facebook. I'm Tom Bird, instant meteorologist here on the Calf Canyon Hermit Peak Fire with Team 2. And you're probably not used to seeing me. I'm a new face. You were probably, if you've been watching these, seeing Bruno. Yesterday was Bruno's last day. He and I transitioned through the day yesterday. He got me up to speed. He's actually on his way now back to Boulder. I'm up from Santa Teresa, New Mexico to work the fire for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to do a weather update for you. And we'll start out with last night. Last night, we had what we call a backdoor cold front. That's a cold front that moves in from the northeast, out of the plains, the central plains of the United States, and backs its way into New Mexico from the east. And what it did last night, I'll show you here on the map with the perimeter of our fire, is we have a really high spine of the Sangre de Cristos that run north to south right through the fire, right? And so with that cold front, and it wasn't really all that cold, although we are much cooler today, it pushed in from this northeast direction and washed up against that spine and started spilling over into the Pecos Valley areas west of the spine where we have a lot of open line. So that was a concern last night with that easterly wind push. Wondered if it might try to push some of this fire outside the line, but luckily we didn't see any of that. But what it did do for us is it brought in a lot of moisture, Gulf moisture from the Gulf of Mexico that had moved up into Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and then we pushed that air in from the east. What that did, if you live in the plains or on the east slopes of the Sangres, you know that we have a lot of mid and low level clouds this morning. That was all that increase in moisture. And what it did for the firefighters and us out on the line is it really bolstered that relative humidity recovery overnight. So at night, we want that RH to come back up. That helps the fire to get a lot less intense and quiet and slows it down. And we've been seeing recoveries of 30 to 40% and even lower, but last night it was above 85% to near 100%. So that was a huge, huge increase. I want to walk over to this monitor here. This is a satellite capture in the overnight hours. And what you're looking at here, this maroon area, what you see here with all the pixels and everything moving to the north and east, that's the tops of thunderstorms that were blowing up over Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and moving away. This milky area right here, this was low-level clouds. And if you watch it, we're on a loop, you can see these low-level clouds start fairly north, and as they do, as we go through the night, they move in. The fire is right here. And so you can see, and you can actually see the hot spot, which is the fire there on the west side. And you can see these clouds bank up. This sharp line right there, that's that crest that I was talking about of the Sangre de Cristos. And you see they didn't get to the west of that, and they all kind of hung up right there. We call that damming. So those clouds, that moisture got dammed up right there. So now we're going to talk about today. Today on the fire, we expect it to be cooler by about 10 to 12 degrees. So significant cooling with that cold front through us now. We also expect it to be much, much more humid than what we've been seeing. Yesterday was the last day for a while that we're going to see that deep southwest flow pattern. That's typical of the spring that brings us warm, dry, and breezy, windy conditions. So yesterday we had minimum relative humidities in the afternoon between 10 and 15. That's critically dry. But today we're really lifting those up much more than what we saw yesterday to 25 to 35% minimum relative humidity. That is really working in the favor of us out there on the fire. The winds will be much lighter. Yesterday we were from the southwest. It was 15 to 25, down low with gusts of 30. Up high it was 25, gusts 35 plus. So we're going to see a lot less wind today. If you're east of the Sangre de Cristos, on the black side of the fire, mostly south and southeast winds 10 to 15, much lower than yesterday. If you're on the west side, mostly south and southwest, again, 10 to 15. Some of those higher ridges will get gusts to 25. And then the clouds. We're going to keep the clouds in on the east side. On the west side, when we get that afternoon warming, we'll start to see more clouds bubble up. And what that means is we have slight chances that we'll see very isolated shower or thunderstorm develop over and west of the fire and possibly move across. It won't bring any significant rainfall, so it won't really help to put the fire out or anything like that, but it just will be actually a watch out situation for the guys out there, because if we do see a thunderstorm, that always means lightning. Lightning is always deadly if you're outside and can't find shelter. It also means erratic and gusty outflow winds are possible. And lastly, although we don't expect it, there could be some intense rainfall in a small area that could potentially pose a threat for very local isolated flash flooding. So let's move over back to the screen. And what we're looking at here is the forecast for precipitation across the United States for today. So we're looking at this afternoon, Wednesday, and you can see we're right here. This is the Sangre de Cristo Mountains that extend out of Colorado south into New Mexico. And you see that little footprint there of green, and that's just indicative of the fact that there is those slight chances this afternoon of some showers. Not a lot of rain, like I said. So let's move it to tomorrow. So now we're looking at Thursday, and now you see a much bigger footprint across this portion of the state of New Mexico, where we're actually seeing more than double the chances that we'll see some showers and some thunderstorms moving over the fire footprint. So let's move to the next slide here. And this is actually the forecast precipitation for today, for Thursday and Friday. So it's a 3-day precipitation forecast. And what you'll notice is that most of the rainfall is falling to the east of our area, over the eastern plains of New Mexico, into the Texas Panhandle, and further east. And you see just a few blips over our area, meaning we're not looking for a lot of rainfall. So even though we've kind of interrupted that elevated to critical fire weather pattern across the area, and we're moderated the fire weather conditions, we're not ending fire season by any means with this short little period of better conditions. We're more humid. We have chances for isolated scattered rain, but we don't expect a whole lot of widespread coverage, and we don't expect a lot of that rain to be heavy. And so this is just a brief interlude before we get back in to what we consider to be typical fire season. And we're early June, and this is the heart of fire season for the Southwest, when we expect our conditions to be the most elevated. So back here on the monitor, another way that we look at the forecast is this is a blend of several models put together, and they kind of spit out an average. And so if you look at our mountains for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and our lowlands for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, what you can see is not a lot expected today, either in the lowlands or in the mountains. But then we get a bump for Thursday and for Friday. And if you look at these rain amounts and the totals that they bring to us, it's about 1/1500ths to 2/10ths. So even then, we're not looking at a lot of rain over the next 3 days. Now let's finally go to, I think the matrix will be next. And here's our weather matrix, the tool that we use to keep good weather situational awareness for all the firefighters and the overhead team. We go from Wednesday today all the way through next Monday, so 6 days of weather here represented. In these first 3 days, you see a lot of green blocks. Those green blocks mean moderated burning conditions. In other words, in favor of us to be able to get a lot of work done on the fire. And what you'll notice here is cooler temperatures, a lot of clouds. The relative humidity minimums are high, and so are the maximums. And then the winds are lower than what we've been seeing, much lighter winds than what we were seeing. And then these are our rain and storm chances. They increase tomorrow and again on Friday, and then they're done. That system moves out. We sweep out that moisture. We get the deep south winds back into the area. And what that does is it brings the warming back. We get less clouds. Our relative humidity recoveries really drop each night, and our daily minimums begin to get back into that critical level with teens for minimum relative humidities. Our instability goes to the top of the chart. That's as high as they get, as a 6. And then we start seeing stronger winds from the west. So we had this break for today, tomorrow, and again on Friday, with moderated fire weather conditions, more moisture, more clouds, storm chances. And then Saturday, we sweep all that moisture out, go back to that typical dry southwest pattern with warmer temperatures and stronger winds. So that right there pretty much wraps it up in a nutshell. That's the weather that we expect. So we get 2 buckets or 2 boxes. We got this box for the next 3 days, which is moderated, the box for the days after that, which is more elevated and possibly critical for fire weather. And that's your fire weather update for the day. Thank you.